to Synchronicity. I'm recording this on the weekend, even though it's going to come out Monday. Oh, did YouTube just? I'm not. That wasn't a. That wasn't a planned thing. YouTube just monetized my channel. That's cool. Now I can make upwards of 30 cents a video. I know this monetization game. It's an interesting game, but that's cool. Thanks, YouTube. That's fun. I'm going to be doing more YouTube stuff. I'm just trying to settle into the groove here in Los Angeles, and I am settling into the groove. I joined a gym. Do we know Equinox, guys? Remember when everyone left Equinox because Stephen Ross, who is also the owner of the Miami Dolphins. This took a nice little pivot in the beginning of the Love Yourself episode. Stephen Ross did like a dinner for Donald Trump. I don't know, a few months ago, and everyone got real upset. They got real mad at him, and they were like, "Fuck Equinox," because he also owns Equinox. And everyone, like a bunch of people were like, "I'm not going to Equinox anymore." And then, of course, those people were like, "Oh yeah, we're bougie as fuck. We want the bougie gym, so we're going back to Equinox." And I was there 2 days ago, and I was asking them about that. I was like, "Hey, what happened? Like, did everyone leave and then just come back?" She's like, "Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Just go. If you're bougie, go to the bougie gym. It's fucking fine. It's all good. I love it." Anyway, did that. This is a big episode for a lot of reasons. It's going to be a combo question episode, and the dominant theme is going to be loving yourself. And I don't know, I guess I didn't spend enough time on this reflecting back on all the episodes I've done. We've done so much about imaginal acts and finding, a strategy and techniques to help us kind of evoke the life we want and to be the person we want to be. But a big part of this is, loving, just having unconditional love, acceptance, and forgiveness. And it has to start with yourself. So I know I've touched on that in various points. But the other night you ever get like sucked into like a weird vortex of like a dominant theme? I mean, you do, because this is what you're doing. This is your life. But sometimes they're so acute for me. It's like, what the fuck? Like, how is this so ridiculous? So somehow, I think it might have been an Instagram thing or a Twitter thing that turned into a YouTube thing. I was watching a YouTube video of Louise Hay, and Louise Hay is Hay House Media. She has this great book, this little booklet, Heal Your Body. She's cool as fuck. She's also like a new age, new thought person. She really popularized this idea of positive thinking, and positive thinking just sounds to so many people like just so stupid. It's just like, oh yeah, it's like Stuart Smalley from Saturday Night Live, dating myself there a little bit. But it's like this goofy, just ridiculous self-help motivational stuff that obviously doesn't work, right? But the weird thing is it does kind of work if you do it right and you believe it. And one of the best places to start is loving yourself. So in the morning, I'm in a room right now where there's like a mirrored wall, right? I guess it's just a mirror. So I get to do this every morning, but you look at yourself and you just go, I love you. You're the best. You're so great. You're the coolest. Your day is going to be great. Your life is going to be great. Anything you've done wrong in the past, you've learned from that. You're not going to do it again. So don't even worry about it. You're just like the best person ever. So if you look in the mirror every morning or every night and do that, watch and see what happens in your life. Watch how you start to relate to yourself. And this is kind of like setting up your mental diet, right? Neville Goddard talks about, you're controlling your mental diet. He uses this great example of when he was younger, his mother told him to go, they're going to have duck in a week, so go feed the ducks. And he learned the lesson. It's a long story. It's pretty awesome. You'll hear it in some of the talks if you go look it up. I'm also starting to upload double talks on the MindPod Network YouTube for Neville Goddard, because like 45 minutes is great, but sometimes you want 2 in a row. So I'm doing that. But anyway, in this talk, he's like, if you feed the ducks fish for like a week before you eat them, the duck tastes like fish, and it's disgusting. He's like, if you're eating duck, you don't want it to taste like fish. It's gross. So he did that once, and his mom knew, and everyone knew, and he was like, shit, I fucked up. But anyway, it's the same thing with the mental diet. If you want, some positive action in your life, you need to really start at the root, which is your thoughts and your feelings. And a good way to prompt that, it's kind of setting the table, getting bulk preparing your food a week or a month in advance. It's a real clear way of prepping that mental diet for yourself. So anyway, I was watching this Louise Hay thing, and then I'm still going through this. I'm going to call her Toofty. I know her name is Tafty. I'm going to say this every fucking time. But Toofty the priestess, it was so like the whole book kind of towards like until you're like 3/4 of the way through, she's just like kind of yelling at you and calling you snail. And like, she's like, you suck. I'm the best. And I'm like, I kind of like this. I don't know why, but I'm like, I like this type of teacher. But then like, right after I watched this Louise Hay video, I started the next chapter, and she was like, hey, the most important thing is I love you and you need to love yourself too. And I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, this is a real dramatic tone shift. And anyway, it was just like one of those things where like the energy was coming through, and it can be hard to love ourselves when a lot of shit is going on around us, or we're making decisions that impact other people or ourselves, and we're not sure how it's going to turn out. But the faith and conviction, again, is built from just kind of knowing who you are and how reality works. But when you build in this ability to love yourself, oh boy, is it very nice. And if that feels foreign to you, if it's like, I don't know if I can do that, well, then you kind of know what one of your hurdles or obstacles are in terms of manifestation. Because let me break this down for you. You may be one of the best manifestors on the planet ever to exist, but if you're not happy, fulfilled, and unconditionally loving, accepting, and forgiving yourself, what the fuck does it matter that you have physical manifestations of shit? You're going to be upset. You're not going to be happy all the time. You're not going to be in a state of bliss. You're not going to be free. That sucks, in my opinion. So it's really good to start at the loving yourself point, because then everything else is reflected back to you from that point, right? This is the reflective nature of reality. So anyway, we'll get more into that, but let's go to these questions, because we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It looks like 6, and I think there's some severals in here. All right, main question. Oh, and remember, I don't know, a few episodes ago, I said it was like Nimue. It's Nimue. He got in touch with me. Thank you for correcting the way I said your name. Oh, should we maybe before we do a group imaginal act, because you guys have been hitting me up. The money stuff has been coming in. The compliment stuff has been coming in. How about we do a fun little thing? This is going to be interesting, because I was having a conversation with my friend, and she was like, she was getting on me about this lottery stuff, because my stance on the lottery for the most part is it's not like it's kind of like monetizing imaginal stuff, like straight up being like, I will teach you how to use your imagination exactly like this. And it's like, that's cool. You can embed that in something else and make it part of a narrative. But to me, it was like, it lacks imagination, right? There's other cooler ways to make money. But anyway, she was giving me shit about this. She was like, you shouldn't tell people they shouldn't win the lottery, because maybe some people really want to win the lottery. And I think there was this guy recently who won like $560 million from one of the big Mega Millions or something, and he quoted Neville Goddard and said he had been visualizing. So I want to be clear, you can do whatever you want. Don't think it's me calling the lottery lame is not it actually being lame. So let's do a fun little thing. Now, I am not encouraging gambling. I am not encouraging any reckless behavior, but perhaps one would maybe buy a scratch-off ticket this week, or a lottery ticket of any sort, and one would maybe believe and know that this is going to make them a winner. Now, this is a fun one for me, just because, listen, the odds are there's probably only going to be like a few, I don't know, maybe like 50 or 100 people who actually do this. Technically, no one should really win, or they should win like a small amount. So if you do this and you win, please get in touch with me, just because I want to hear it. I'm going to do it too. I'll go to 7-Eleven after this and buy a ticket, and I'll report back. I typically have not had success in winning the lottery, but I will try to like specifically imagine that I will, so I can come back with a fun story. So we're going to do a lottery ticket this week. Go find your winning ticket, bring it. I don't know. And this also, like, this is dovetailing. I heard Jessa talk about this and on one of her recent podcasts, where she wants to, like, basically hack money, and for people who are having a hard time, like, provide some way to, like, help them out. And this is something, for people who have been in the Discord server, know that I've been talking about for a long time. That's, like, my favorite idea with money, is to, like, have this fund that helps people out when they need it. So this is all to say, some of the reasons that I focus on this money stuff, because some people are just totally stable financially, like, they hacked it, right? I'm hacking it still, just to be clear. Some people don't even know that they can hack it. And I think it's important that we have systems in place that take care of people. This is one of the big reasons I invest in cryptocurrency, is exponentially that asymmetric bet of where that money can go and what it can turn into appeals to me, because I have to have the finest and best things, although I do like the finest and best things, I will say, but because the idea of being able to help someone, if, like, yo, I need $5,000 because this unexpected expense happened, or I just want this thing to help my dreams, that would be such a cool thing to be able to provide that for people. Like, how about that for using money? Like, think if you had billions of dollars and it was just like a helpful, generative, generous thing. That's pretty cool to me. So anyway, lottery. When one of you hits it big, is what I'm saying, kick it back to me. So just when you hit it big time, be cool. That's all I'm saying. So yeah, play the lottery this week. How about that? It's towards we're towards December here. We're getting into this Christmas season. I'll do the I know I've been teasing it, but the Christmas Christ consciousness solar thing that I heard Neville Goddard talk about was pretty revelatory. So I'll talk about that at some point. But anyway, questions. Number 1. For these imaginal acts, how do you make sure to always choose the right environment to realize your goal in? Couldn't one imagine the wrong context for something to happen in when it should have been imagined in a different way? I'm speaking only to the physical environment that you are imagining a scene in. Okay. And here is the explanation. All right, let's read the explanation. I started doing imaginal acts when I first heard your podcast a few months back. Some scenes are very clear to me, and I can imagine the full context and scenery for my specific goal or thing I want to happen. Some scenes, particularly short-term scenes, I cannot imagine proper context. For instance, in the past 2 weeks, we've done a collective imaginal act of someone giving us money in an unexpected way and someone complimenting us unexpectedly. I had a problem with the money because first I was imagining someone giving me money. Then I realized how my specificity of the time and place was limiting. Then I imagined having the money and thinking about how amazing it was, but I didn't know what environment to imagine around me. Okay, all right, okay. Are you a Virgo moon or something? Do not imagine the means. It is pointless. It is fruitless. It is almost impossible in my experience, and not as fun as to just imagine the end. You're building a scene that is trying to embed what happened. That's not what you do. You create a scene, if you're using one of these techniques, that implies it has already happened. So it should be something that really doesn't need a lot of specificity in terms of the actual environment. It could be a phone call. I mean, you could do it in your room, somewhere very common and regular for you, something you're familiar with. That's a way to kind of get your imaginal mind to build the scene. Because, like, if you imagine your room, or a place you go often, that'll be easy for you to sum it up. But what you're going to be imagining is maybe someone saying something to you, or the feeling, most importantly, of having the wish fulfilled. So if you're trying to build, like, where you are when it happens, you're trying to imagine the means. That doesn't work, really. It can work. I've had it work, but that is not, the feeling is what's important, right? Like, let's pick something. If I want, like, the most perfect relationship, if I start focusing on a person in that relationship, I'm constricting the means to a very specific and narrow set of qualities. I'm not saying you can't do this. I'm just saying that's what you're doing. Whereas if I imagine the qualities and the type of relationship I would like to have and how I'd like to feel, there's a lot more wiggle room, and your imagination and reality will literally conform and allow that to happen. It also encourages, when you let go of the means, this flexibility of mind, this ability to go with the flow, to allow things that maybe you never would have experienced or thought of in physical reality into your life. That's really important because that ability is kind of how you ride the wave. That relax the tension that we use in the liminal state. All right, you want to get weird? This is what's going on, guys. Okay. You know how I'm like, you should get into that boundary between going to sleep and being asleep. Okay. Yeah, that's important to do. It is something we do, but this is just what consensus reality is turning into. That's where we're always in this liminal boundary. So that's why having the ability to accept and give up the means of how the thing you want to experience happens is so important, because then we can actually like navigate this shit without like having to micromanage and control everything. And as someone who navigated life trying to micromanage and control everything, even when I thought I wasn't, this shit is way better. It's the only way I could say it. It's so much better. So yeah, in order to your question, the environment only should facilitate the feeling. If it's getting in the way, drop it. Just find the thing that helps you get to the feeling. That's the most important thing. Okay. Question number 2. That was a good answer. I'm patting myself on the back for that one. Number 2. How do imaginal acts and Goddard's thinking balance with the idea you are not your thoughts? Well, I think people say you are not your thoughts when you're thinking bad things. And it's kind of a way to just not let them hook you so much. But you are your thoughts, quite literally. So I think that maybe is an avoidance technique. And I don't think avoidance necessarily, but it's a way of like making it easier for people who are dealing with very present, feelings of like terror, fear, PTSD, shock, depression, anxiety. It's a way of kind of like showing that you can shift your thoughts. However, I think the phrase "you are not your thoughts" is misleading. So, but yeah, Goddard's thinking and this whole idea, it's best to not even think of it like Goddard's thinking. Just think of it as how stuff works. It encompasses literally everything. If I come up with the whole theory and school and course that says you are not your thoughts, and I meticulously go through it and I believe it and present it to other people, then that has traction. But you are quite literally your thoughts, because your sense of I am is everything. So yeah. Do you think, and your feelings, most importantly, that's like the unfolding mechanism. Number 3, do you think there are like collective imaginations that can counteract our own or others' imaginations, like fields of psychic energy or probabilities competing for realization? Here's an example. For a specific example, do you think that Julian Assange can imagine himself out of confinement? Because a lot of what you say seems to suggest that there's no limits to this. Do you think enough people could imagine that he does get out of jail and it could happen? And if so, do you think that field of imagination has to be stronger than the field of imagination of others that imagine he will never get out? Such a good question. Okay, so we're dealing with imaginal forces and energy, and equals MC squared with imaginal stuff. The most important thing relating to Julian Assange's innocence, and this is going to hit some people so wrong, I can already feel it, is his belief. If he sits there with the conviction that his imagination creates reality and imagines himself out of prison, he will quite literally get out. Yeah, that's a mind fuck, because you could say someone in poverty, in drastic situations, if they can imagine themselves out of that, yes, they can. Now, when we're talking about mass consciousness, collective awareness, the best example I can see of this is in sports. It's kind of a weird analogy, but follow me on this. So sports, we have fans, we have passive onlookers, we have the competitors, we have coaches, we have all of these influences affecting kind of what's going on, right, in the sport. But every so often we get these athletes or coaches that transcend the averages. They are stars. They are quite literally like superhuman, right? Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Tom Brady. I'm gonna throw Dan Marino in there. People would maybe be like, no, yeah, Dan Marino. But anyway, athletes where it's like, holy shit, Michael Phelps, Usain Bolt. So the point is those individuals transcend everyone's collective belief of what's possible. This is the same people who broke, the 3-minute mile, all of these things that we didn't think people could do. What was it? The 20-minute, the marathon one that just broke. these things are quite literally created, these boundaries, to be transcended. This is the game of life. This is why we're here. That's why it's so fucking awesome right now, because we're just like crushing through boundaries and thresholds. It's freaking some people out. I totally get that. But this is quite literally what is going on. So as it pertains to mass consciousness, yeah, there's an impact, but it is always up to the individual and their reality and their world to move them to where they would like to go, to propel themselves forward internally and then externally. So yeah, this is definitely something, but like, look at Donald Trump. I don't think anyone really thought Donald Trump was going to be president when he first floated that idea to his friends and family. Do you know what I mean? They're like, Donald's crazy. Like, what is he talking about? But his conviction and his belief then became infectious. He put out a vibe. People picked up on it. And lo and behold, he's president. And it's fucking nuts. It's crazy, but he is. So yes, people's opinions, perspectives, and beliefs can affect you until you understand what's going on as an individual. But these forces are clearly at play in the world. You know, what we believe certainly has had a big impact on how the world turns out. However, we've been kind of just giving up what we believe to other like news sources or authorities or science or spiritual people or gurus. And it's up to us to kind of do this for real, for ourselves. So that's a wonderful question. Yeah, I mean, that's how it works. It's fucking crazy, right? So if a murderer, just the worst person in the world, imagine themselves out of jail, would they get out? Yeah, but you have to remember, to develop that level of conviction and belief really does require a stable mind. Like, it does, you know? And like, look at someone like Nelson Mandela. It doesn't always happen right away. So, you know, conviction, faith, stabilization of mind, those things are important. Question number 4. I know some Neville Goddard techniques, but I'm wondering if you, who has been through hell and back, thank you, can give me some advice. The techniques I know work, but I feel so weak so as to even try them. You can tell me to go fuck myself. I'd understand, but I'd appreciate any help. I'm not going to tell you to go fuck yourself. Jesus Christ. I hope Callie's treating you wonderfully and you come back to the East Coast with a ton of new metaphysical nukes to drop on us. Yeah, I'll drop them here. The advice, right? When you're weak and you can't summon the strength to do something, you have to recognize that that is a thought like anything else. It is a belief that you have. It's actually a pretty useful one, because if you've ever been really tired or weak and then you just kind of like, you know what? Fuck it. I am not tired and weak. I'm going to go do something. I'm going to go exercise. I'm going to go jog. I'm going to do something creative. You just push yourself up. That moment is so pivotal in terms of showing you what is actually possible. And then you keep doing it and it builds like a habit. So that may sound daunting if you don't feel like you can do it, but all it takes is a few times. And if you're just like far away, like, just say to yourself an affirmation like, I am motivated. I am energized. Just do that when you're going to sleep. And you can be like, oh, I didn't do it right. Well, eventually, after doing that for like a long enough time, you'll start to notice that maybe you have a little more energy. So just don't believe your thoughts that are telling you you're tired, you can't do it, you're sick, you're whatever. Yeah, not really true. If you want it to be true and you want to believe that, by all means, go ahead. But you really want to not buy into your thoughts that are restrictive and limiting, just because it's like not fun for the most part. If it's trying to teach you something, that's great. And that's what it's doing. You're just trying to show you that you can transcend those states that are feeling limiting to you. Okay. Number 5. Can we stop climate change if we imagine it so? Yes. And God, this is going to sound weird. We will, and we are, and it has happened. That does not imply we don't have to take physical action to make it happen and shouldn't have awareness of what's going on, but we're going to be okay. It may sound delusional. It may sound carefree. It may sound nonchalant, but I know how this shit works. Now, focusing on climate change and like the environment as your imaginal act is a very advanced technique. If you are 100% stable, 100% fulfilled, 100% in ecstasy, let's not say 100%, 95 to 100% stabilizing, very powerful states of consciousness. And just to be clear, like, I'm putting myself at right now throughout these days of expansion in Sagittarius this season, I don't know, like 70%, 75% stabilized with a lot of these things. Um, it's like, so you got work to do. I would not focus on things like climate change. I would not focus in on suffering in the world. I would not focus on politics. I'm saying you can pay attention to them, but don't focus on them as your imaginal acts. Primarily, this is just my intuition. If you haven't stabilized your own shit, you're super vulnerable to the energies that are attached to those. Because how many people who have not stabilized their own shit are interested in, stopping the animals from being killed for veganism, stopping the climate change from the pollutants, who don't have their shit stabilized? And what are they bringing to those? This kind of goes into the mass consciousness question. What energies are being brought into those situations? Have you guarded yourself? Have you realized how to protect yourself yet? No? If not, that's why I say focus on yourself first. Learn how to fucking be a god and a goddess. Learn how to be an animal. Learn how to be every type of spirit and deity. Learn your psychic skills. Unfold your magic abilities. Bend reality. Stabilize your mind. That shit comes first. Because if you're trying to focus on other people or big fucking things, I don't know. Like, what will happen is, in my experience, is your individual interests and passions and desires will align with a greater good, which will align with what you're here to do and want to do. And that can be changed. You're allowed to do that. But that alignment, you'll know what it feels like and it'll stabilize you. So if that is working on climate change, amazing. But that sense of equanimity and stabilization needs to be there. And your desires will typically point you in the direction of what you're supposed to be doing. That's kind of their function, right? That's why they exist. So that's important. So it's just a kind of a cautionary thing. Yes, we can. Climate, we're so good. Have you guys seen young people? Have you experienced young people? They're fucking geniuses. They're like amazing little light beings of wonder, and they're fucking smarter than us for the most part. I mean, I just feel privileged I can communicate with these fucking light being children. So we're good. We're good. They have more awareness of it. The people who fuck this shit up are like, they're kind of not the dominant shit anymore in terms of getting stuff done on this planet. So just, we're good. We're good. It doesn't mean you don't have to do anything. Get a water bottle, do your little things that make you feel good. But if it feels burdensome, do not do that. Number 6. Oh, Howard, here you go. I've been waiting for this one. Howard from the crypto server, my bud in the UK. I totally get the imagination creating reality concept. The only part that you've said that doesn't make sense to me so far is the LSD thing and it being an imaginal act that was stabilized by Albert Hoffman to induce a mystical experience. The part that doesn't make sense is that it literally hits the receptors in the brain that induce a psychedelic state, so it seems like the LSD would have that property anyway without the imaginal aspect. I guess I'm looking at it in the way that, for example, when Arthur Hefter isolated mescaline from peyote, that was identified as the psychedelic component because it hits the right receptors in the brain, not because it was imagined to. But mescaline has been making people trip long before it was identified as mescaline. Right, okay. Again, it's going to rub our scientific and materialistic based people a little wrong way. This world is kind of bullshit. It's a shadow of what's real. Any physiological, and I don't think we shouldn't be pursuing these things and understanding them. It's super great. It's super awesome. But any physiological experience that can be observed is a result of a previously imagined state of consciousnness. This includes plants. This includes isolates like mescaline from something like peyote. This includes something like LSD that was synthesized from ergot, a mold that forms on wheat. They're just imaginal acts that are sprouting to fruition in this reality. Physiologically, if you kind of get caught in that realm, you're looking at the effect and trying to say it's the cause. I mean, I know that's unsatisfying for people who love the scientific method for empiricism for physical matter. But as we delve more into the quantum realm, I know it's a buzzword, but as we learn more about the nature of reality at different levels, we see that what we view as physical matter and physiological processes, man, they just don't really work like how we thought they did. So you can say Yeah, well, LSD physiologically does this to the brain. We can witness it. Therefore, that's why it's happening. Or we can say someone imagined that this thing had this property and therefore it did. Pick your poison there. I tend to go to the root cause, which is everything up in our mind is the progenitive. It's the clear cause of everything. So to look at physiological effects and say, oh, well, this is quite literally why it's happening to me is just like, it's just you're wrong in terms of the way you're getting there. Now, what's cool about looking at physiological effects is they can confirm in the same way as synchronicity or a sign does that something is true. And that's what physiological representations of energetic stuff really are. They're confirmations. They're like, oh, okay, yeah, it is doing that for sure. We can replicate that. And I think we're going to experience a lot of this with the psychedelic therapy. I think this idea of mushrooms being an antidepressant is going to be like is going to be challenged pretty hard. I think a lot of psychedelics have therapeutic value, but a lot of things do, and it's our belief in them that do. But it also is the consciousness that is related to the observable effects, right? Mushrooms for me, they're little tricksters. You could think you have a total handle on them sometimes, and they may not work that way. Doesn't mean they're not effective for something that we can view the effects for. It's a regular kind of time-based trip, 4-6 hours, but um, that energy is not as predictable as some of the other ones, is all I'm saying. So, yeah, I know this is like a weird way of looking at reality, especially if like you're into chemistry. What I would look at is if these concepts are still a little bit fuzzy, because like Neville Goddard and the imaginal stuff and the stuff I talk about, it's mysticism, right? And that's fundamentally dealing with mysteries, but you can explain some of those mysteries. If you want a more grounded and practical approach, I highly recommend Joseph Murphy's The Power of the Subconscious Mind, because he was a chemist, and you should hear what he has to say about healing and why healing works. And he studied with Abdullah, who was Neville Goddard's teacher as well. And it's interesting that two wildly different approaches and perspectives, kind of the more scientific methodology and the more mystic, like, whoa, shit's going on, both end up at the same point. And this is also, I think, why the Dalai Lama has often said that if science contradicts any aspect of Buddhism, he'll change it, right? Because he's like, that's not how shit works, and I know it. So just they can live in harmony, but if you find something like someone saying, hey, LSD has everything's a placebo, because nothing is really real. Do you understand? That's the whole point. Now, I'm not saying when I smoke a joint that like it's a placebo and I don't feel any effects. It's just I recognize it. It is for what it is. And you don't have to let it be limiting. With everything I talk about, whether it's these techniques, astrology, tarot, energy stuff, talking to dead people, if it feels constrictive, restrictive, deterministic, like it's boxing you in, like it's predetermined something, that ain't it. That is not what I'm talking about. This should feel liberating, expansive, freeing, joyful, happy. That's what it should be. So though that's very important to remember with all of this stuff. But yeah, I know maybe it doesn't make sense that Albert Hoffman imaginally stabilized something, which was a mystical experience. But that is my conception of what happened. And of course, the physiological effects are real, right? Totally. Of course. All right. Now let's get back to the theme of this episode, which is loving yourself. Just do this over the next few weeks or months. Just every day, make a commitment to look at yourself in the mirror. And if you don't like what you see, that's fine. But just look at yourself as though you were loving every aspect of who you are. And it may feel forced and it may feel wrong. And you may look at some physical flaw or an emotional flaw or psychological flaw or a wound. But just like imagine that you love yourself for real and say nice words to yourself every morning. And then just watch what happens. It's a very powerful thing. The other thing I like to do, this is from the Tufti, the priestess, is you imagine a mirror in your mind, right? And in this mirror, you see your reflection. But rather than saying, I want something and that you're going to get it from the mirror, you offer what you want to the mirror, right? So if I want money, I give the mirror money in my imagination. This is a powerful technique. Just give you, if you want a physical beauty, if you want charm, if you want attractiveness, success, just keep giving it to yourself in the mirror. And see what happens in your life. Eventually, like, here's what we're really trying to do here is we're trying to get to the point where we can change our conceptions of who we are on a dime and in a positive way. That's very important, because if we can do that, we then have the ability to act how we want to and do the things we want to do, rather than reacting to energies that maybe are binding us or restricting us or just are kind of fucking us up. So when we start to really accept, forgive, and love ourselves, we have this freedom that happens. It's like you can tell when you're around people who are free. I think this is why a lot of people are enjoying this podcast recently, is because I can hear the difference in my voice from like a year ago, like when I was speculating and trying to like grope for things that I had experienced before but couldn't quite figure out what they were. Like, I know how much easier it is for me to talk for 40 minutes, 50 minutes now and just be like, whoa, that shows. I'm going to listen back to that because I think that was some wise shit. When you really, really accept yourself, you don't have to worry about doubt and fear fucking your shit up. They may pop up, but again, they pop up as threshold guardians to show you that they should be transcended. And you want threshold guardians sometimes, right? If you're just plowing through literally every fucking aspect of reality, you may lose your bearings. You might not know where you've been. You might not know how you got there. So you want sometimes a little gate to be like, hey, can I get by? Here's some music. And they're like, yeah, here you go. They're like bouncers, and bouncers aren't dicks all the time. They can be dicks, clearly. But they're not. So just recognize, there's accept it all. That does not mean accept negative, bullshitty things into your life. Boundaries are incredibly important. There's a lot of stuff that you're going to learn, and we're expanding really quickly right now. Like, it's obvious. And if you know, that should make sense to you, basically, if you're listening to this. Let's pull some cards. I hadn't planned to do this, but Knight of Cups reversed. I'm going to look at it upright. So the Knight of Cups in the reversed position shows a knight holding a cup in his right hand atop his horse. The right hand is the hand of reason and logic, and a cup is a vessel that receives the psychic intuitive water. So the logical mind allows the intuitive waters to come in it. The left hand is grasping the reins of the horse as it takes a pause before a stream is crossed. So this is like intuitive reflection before making moves. It's the ability to plan and receive relating to your emotions. It came up reverse. So I think the challenge here for a lot of us is to accept these emotions and use our rational and logical minds in tandem with them before we make moves. Now, going with the flow is possible for everyone, but let's pull some other cards and see if we can get some clarity on why this would be happening. The Sun reversed as well, right? So the Sun is all four suits of the tarots. And I like, people get like freaked, like, you see a card like the Sun reversed, you're like, oh shit, it's one of the luminaries. It's this generative light. Why is it reversed? It's invitations to accept these things. It's not that we don't have the qualities associated with the Sun in the tarot, which is joy, innocence, happiness. It's that we're being asked to open up to these things. So don't react negatively if you hear like the Sun is reversed, if you know your tarot. What this is like, open up to the joy, open up to your emotions, feeling good. Know that you're a good person. If you're listening to this podcast, the chances that you're a shithead are so fucking low. Like, people can't stomach me if they're if they're shitheads. I think that's why I don't have a lot around me. It's like a magnet that propels them away. And I love shitheads too. I'm trying to help them. And then the Two of Wands also reversed. 3 reversals in a row. Know that you have the world in the palm of your hand. I like a song by Katy Perry called Dark Horse. It's just good. There's like Kali energy in it. There's the Two of Wands energy in it. It's just Shakti stuff. It's power. But you may not have left the comfort of your home yet. And if that's true, I mean your psychic home, but maybe your physical home, if you haven't, you will. But take the time to plan what you want to see in the world, right? And again, use your logic and reason. Your movement will be guided by your intuition and your passions. Wands are fire in the tarot. And you want to be able to use your passions to direct you towards what you want in the world, which you use through logic and reason. I don't want to be too pejorative on logic and reason. I think it's had its run and it's kind of dominated and fucked a lot of people up, but it's still incredibly valuable. This isn't the time where the divine feminine comes back and fucks the masculine so much that the masculine's like wounded and hurt, because that'll just create and perpetuate a cycle of these wild shifts and swings. Luckily, it feels like the divine feminine is clearly like, yeah, it's going to rage pretty hard, but then she's going to be like, all right, let's balance this out. And now let's work together and let's do this shit right. So that's what's going on. You like the little energy update? I think Howard asked in the survey, go fill out listen, sign up for the email list is all I can say. In the coming months, people who did that will be very happy. But I think Howard was like, you should do more energy updates in the survey. So I'm going to do those regularly, a few on the podcast, and then we're going to do some special stuff that's coming up. I've been talking about it. Join the Discord server, Crypto Sync. I've walled off the crypto stuff, but everything else is free access. So you can find that. Links on my Twitter, links on whatever. They're everywhere. Just find it. Ask someone. Go ask somebody. All right. That's it for this episode. This will be out on Monday, maybe Sunday. Maybe I'll put it out on Sundays. Sunday. Feel free to ask me questions. Feel free to ask for imaginal acts. Good stuff is coming. The books for reading, they're open. I have priority bookings now is how we're doing this. This is a planning thing as much as anything else. If you need a reading really quick, it costs a little bit more. If not, you can book starting in the new year at the regular prices. The LA ones are also going on. So those have been fun. They've been they've been really crazy. And then someone asked me the other day, they're like, yo, I don't necessarily want a reading, but I want to talk. You can just book a time slot and we can talk. That's fine. Of course, why would it? There's no difference. I mean, the readings are also very helpful too, and I'll probably slip those in there. But anyway, that's it. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy your life. Recognize no matter what's going on, you are loved. You are capable of love. It's the best. Love yourself first and watch what happens. It's so fucking great. It's so fucking great. So do that. Until next time, happy imagining.